morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a really, really good new stadium card that could make a whole heap of a difference. It's called Blizzard Town, and it has been translated by the lovely David Hochmann. When I asked David what it was called, he told me it was called Blizzard Town. I told him, David, I do not want to live in Blizzard Town. And then he reminded me that that's probably where I would find Mamoswine. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm moving to Blizzard Town, and I'm going to buy a new coat. So what does it actually do? Well, according to the lovely David Hochmann, although the lovely Joe from Cerebi.net, great website, has also confirmed this, it reads that if a Pokemon's remaining HP is 40 or less, it cannot use attacks. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yes. This is huge. This literally stops your opponent attacking. Now look, obviously there's a bunch of ways to play around with this. Obviously with high HP Pokemon, etc, 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 fine. But the point is, this can stop your opponent attacking. It is the equivalent of your opponent not having any energy, or not having a Pokemon with which they can attack. We've all been in those games where we've not been able to attack for one turn and lost the game. And similarly, we've all been in those games where your opponent couldn't attack for one turn and we won the game. This can absolutely swing games one way or the other. We have for quite a while now been looking for the kind of impactful stadium that can stop us playing Shrine of Punishment, because one of the things about stadiums, you can only have one at a time, so we're always looking for, is it better than what we've got? And for a lot of decks, Shrine of Punishment has been the best we've got. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this might actually make a difference to the point where we could play it over Shrine of Punishment. And yes, I know that's a bold claim. Now, I was unsure if we'd ever had this before. I couldn't personally think of one, but I put some feelers out, and David has reminded me about Holland's Circle, which does stop you attacking, but is not the same by any stretch of the imagination. That was a very old card that came out in EX Crystal Guardians, and it read, prevent all effective attacks, including damage, done by either player's active Pokemon. If an active Pokemon uses an attack, the attack ends, and you discard the card. So it stopped either player attacking, but only for one turn. But then again, if you put it down and you tried to attack, you discard it and it wouldn't stop your opponent. It was, let's say, imperfect, just for I'm going to stop you attacking. Not Blizzard Town, ladies and gentlemen. That can absolutely stop you. So the ideal situation here is that you damage your opponent to the point where they can't attack. But really, this is wonderful if you're just short. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've got a Rayquaza, and you've got 6 energy on the field, you're hitting 180. Now obviously, if you want to take out a 210 HP Zoroark, you want to grab yourself a Choice Band, then you're doing 210, you get a KO. You don't really want to play Shrine of Punishment with Rayquaza, because then you'll be taking 10 damage between turns as well. So if you are unable to do that, if you're unable to find the Choice Band, Blizzard Town will stop that Zoroark attacking. And look, they can use a different Zoroark. But the thing is, they maybe have to retreat. Well, if they retreat, they're wasting a double colorless energy. Even if they're not, they're giving you an extra turn to drop something like an Enhanced Hammer to get rid of it. And what if they don't have another Zoroark? And what if they don't have another double colorless energy? It's all very well and good saying, look, if they're stopping me attacking, I can just use a different Pokemon. Yes, of course you can. But the thing is, they've got to have that other Pokemon, and they've got to have the requisite energy, and they've got to be able to get that Pokemon into the active. And that's why a card like Blizzard Town can be really good. Because you can stop your opponent attacking, and even though they can attack, it can be super, super awkward. Now, of course, they could just play a Field Blower, and of course, they could play their own stadium, either of which would get rid of Blizzard Town and put their attacks back on again. But we've got ways around this. Might I remind you about Regice? Now, Regice isn't exactly the most stunning Pokemon ever, but we do have a Regice that, for as long as it's in the active, your opponent cannot play stadium cards. which means they cannot get rid of this. Now, this isn't a Prism Star Stadium. This isn't like Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star. Although, interestingly enough, I did make a video about Regice and Wonder Labyrinth. I'll pop a link to that in the description. But it forces them to have a field blower. Similarly, we looked at Cryogonal just yesterday from this same set. This is going to be a Sky Legend over in Japan. It's going to be part of Unified Minds, our August set over here. And Cryogonal provides item lock, so your opponent could play a stadium, but they couldn't play a field blower. But again, maybe your opponent has a new stadium and a field blower, maybe they don't. And there's many ways around this. I know there are many ways around this. Field blower. Play your own stadium. Get a different Pokemon into the active that has more than 40 HP. Even just healing. If your opponent has got 20 HP remaining, they drop a potion, they go back to 50 HP remaining, and all of a sudden, Blizzard Town doesn't work anymore. Because they've got more than 40 HP remaining. This isn't a stadium that's going to lock them out the game. This isn't a stadium where you're going to whack it down and laugh in your opponent's face because they can't do anything for the rest of the game. Although, as always, ladies and gentlemen, be nice. This is a stadium where you're going to gain a turn or two here or there of your opponent not being able to attack. And that could be enough to win the game. Now, it has unfortunately rotated out of Standard, but do please remember there is a Ninetales in Expanded. It's the one that came out in Primal Clash that stops your opponent playing stadiums. And stops you playing stadiums as well. So there is a chance that maybe in Expanded, in a Seismitoad deck, you play Ninetales and this, and then your opponent just cannot get rid of it, and then they can't attack when they got less than 40 HP remaining. Is it better than playing Burbank City Gym for your Hypnotoxic Laser? Probably not. But it remains an option, ladies and gentlemen. It remains an option. The thing is, we can search this out quite easily. Macargo puts it at the top of your deck. It puts any card at the top of your deck. And let's not forget, Green Search. Now, Green Search can only be played if you have no Pokemon in play with an ability, but then you get to search for any 2 trainer cards and put them into your hand. So you can essentially use this to search for this stadium whenever you want. We're getting Red's Challenge as well. They're both coming in Unbroken Bonds. Red's Challenge is literally computer search as a supporter card. You get to discard 2 cards from your hand, then search for any card and put it into your hand. So I don't know if this is something where we're just going to whack it down and go, boom, now I'm invincible. But I do think it's a kind of card where you can play it, have 1 or 2 in your deck, and then search it out at the right moment to drop it down and stop your opponent attacking. Now, it can hurt you as well, incidentally. If you've got less than 40 HP remaining, you can't attack either. It's a stadium. It's double-sided. That's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. That's what happens. But the fact of the matter is, this is a very impactful stadium. The fact of the matter is, you know what deck you're playing, or at least you really should. And we all know that there are some decks which are prone to being a little bit short of a KO, where you're just not getting that KO. Or there are decks that really rely on Choice Band to get KOs, or Lightning decks that really rely on Electro Power to get KOs. And if you are relying on those cards, this is there for if you miss it. Or if you're just short of KOs, this is there for when you're short. And what it does is just stop your opponent attacking. Yes, they can play their own stadium, they can play a field blower, they can get another Pokemon in the active. There are many ways around this. But your opponent isn't always going to have access to it. And the other huge downside, as I said at the beginning of the video, you've got to turn down something like Shrine of Punishment to play this. So you've got to be sure it's worth it. By the time this comes out, we're going to have Unmanned Power Station, which turns off abilities of EX and GX Pokemon, which can be extremely impactful in a whole bunch of games. But I can absolutely see this seeing play in decks that either are going to be just short of a KO, or are relying on stuff like Electro Power and not always guaranteed to get the KO. And I can certainly see this being a 1 or 2 of in some decks, because it's easy to search out, and it can change the game. It's not a 4 of main stadium, now you can't beat me kind of card, although you could have some fun against stuff like Lost March, playing like your weak Jumpluff. you could have a little bit of fun here if you could spread some damage around in the early game, maybe something like a Tapu Koko, and then just kind of turn off your opponent's entire deck. And actually, we don't have many low HP attackers, but while we're talking about Lost March, don't forget that Natu's got 40 HP and is the backup attacker in that deck. So maybe this could be good against Lost March. It's not a powerhouse deck, but keep it in mind. I'm going to be giving it 4 Wassies, and that might be generous or that might be stingy. There is a lot of potential here. This could be a staple in most decks moving forward, or it could end up seeing no play whatsoever because it's too situational. I, for one, am extremely excited to see which way we end up. But I'm also excited to know what you think about this card, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But please do remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk about games that don't have Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.